Congratulations on making an offer. Thank you for working with the Paulina Gross Group on your Louisiana residential agreement to buy or sell. If you have any questions after this video, please feel free to reach out to us. We are always available. What I want to start out with is this first section. It's pretty much just our agent information so that you know how to contact us, and other parties in the closing will know how to contact us. When you go on down to line 5, that's the property description. We have the municipal address, which is just how you get your mail, whereas on line 8, the legal description is something that the tax assessor uses to identify your home. After that, in line 10 to 19 are all the items that are expected to be included with the sale of the home. So they're kind of getting tired of everyone writing in the same thing over and over, so it's established that doorknobs, blinds, anything affixed to the house is included. If we want to add anything additional, we put that on line 20, and I've highlighted it there. So if we want to ask for something like a refrigerator, a shed, a washer, or dryer, it's going to be listed there, and it's important that we put it on our contract so that it is legally binding. Line 23 is all the items we want to be left out of the sale of the home. So anything that we want to be excluded. Typically we just put things like all personal property so that you don't have to go unload an attic after you move in. And that's something we'll check during our walkthrough and make sure that all personal property has been removed from the home before you actually close on it. Line 30, the mineral rights. This is going to typically have a 0 in there, so that we are saying that the seller will not retain any mineral rights to the property. There will be no fracking. If you guys strike oil, just congratulations, and remember your real estate agent. Line 34, this is the agreed upon price that we're willing to offer for the property. It's going to be written in 2 ways so that there are no discrepancies. Line 38 is when we hope to actually close on the sale. It's typically 30 to 60 days for closing. Line 44 explains that we cannot move in until we actually own the property, not until the date of sale or the act of sale. Line 46, contingency for sale of buyer's other property. This is pretty typical with a lot of homeowners, that they need to sell a property before they can actually purchase another one. Depending on where you lay, you'll have one of those check boxes, either 47 or 49, checked off just to indicate what kind of offer we're making. Line 52 and 54, are we paying cash or are we using a lender, some kind of mortgage service? Those will be also checkboxed here between line 60 to 63, just letting them know what kind of loan we're looking at using. This is the most flexible point or part of the contract, because things are subject to change. But in general, we like to have that pre-approval ready and have a good idea of what kind of loan we are comfortable with using. So line 65, we don't really have a lot of discount points here, but if that was going to be the case, it would obviously be detailed there. Line 66, if we are requesting any kind of assistance, any kind of contribution towards closing costs, fees, or prepaids, we're going to lay out the amount there, letting them know that we are asking for an additional financial condition. Line 70. This whole section is typically saying that we have to be showing we're doing our due diligence and working with a lender to provide a proof of pre-approval, or we have to come up with a proof of funds from your bank within a set amount of days, and that's on line 73 of how many days we think would be feasible for us to acquire that kind of documentation and turn it into the selling party. Typically we would have that already, or about 3 calendar days is pretty normal. Moving to line 79, prorations. You'll see this on your closing documents. They're going to break down everything to the day. This will be the lender and title company will do all that fun math for us and let us know that the seller is responsible for all fees, taxes, HOA, dues, any condo dues, they're going to be responsible for all of them till the closing day, and then the buyer, you, are going to be responsible for all the fees starting the day after closing. So a lot of times you'll see debits and credits broken down on your closing documentation, and your lender or myself will have gone through those before you actually close, so you're comfortable with all the numbers. Line 89, the appraisal. This is going to be required if you're getting a loan. And so the checkbox may be indicating whether it is or is not a condition of the purchase. If it's a cash sale, it's going to be to your discretion if you want to order one. It's not necessarily going to be required since you don't have a lending party. If for some reason the appraisal comes in under, and that's on line 92, we have to give them a set amount of days that we will supply the report to the seller. And then on line 94, a set amount of days that we want to be able to renegotiate the sales price or void the contract. So if the seller is not willing to come down on the price at all, they do have the right to cancel the agreement, and you're held penalty free of getting out of the contract. So you will get your deposit money back, which is that next section. Line 99, your deposit. After all signatures are on the contract, then we want to collect a deposit that will be held by the selling party. It's typically somewhere between $500 and $1,500, and it's to tie you into the property so you're not just making an offer kind of willy-nilly, and shows you as a serious buyer. There are a lot of ways you can get that money back, and it is covered in the following section. But in the meantime, it is money that will be given to the selling party, something like maybe it's Remax or Keller Williams, and then cash. So you do have to have that money on hand. The great thing is you will get that back at closing. So about 30 to 60 days from now, you will get it back. Line 106, if you fail to deliver that deposit, they could take another offer should one come up. So it's not something to drop your life for, but we really do need to get that within a couple of days, and we need to be in open communication with the selling party the entire time. Line 113, the return of the deposit. So to get that deposit money back, there are a couple ways that can be done. That line 116, option 1, if you find out anything during your inspection period, which is typically a 10 to 14 day period, and I do cover that later in the contract, where you will call insurance companies, your lender, to make sure the note is coming up within your budget and to keep your lifestyle the way you want. You do your home inspection and make sure everything, kick all the tires, make sure everything is looking pretty good. You have a set amount of time to do that. And if something comes up during that time where you feel like you're just not comfortable moving forward, I will write an official cancellation, have you sign it, and we will turn it into the selling party, and they will release a check back to you. Option 2, line 119, if the agreement is subject to the buyer's ability to obtain a loan. So if you've been working on your with a lender and you've already gotten a pre-approval, but once they get this contract, they really start doing some digging, and for some reason they might find something that might make you ineligible for a loan. You've done everything you can. We would just require a letter from the lender, couple that with a cancellation, and turn it into the seller, and you would get your money back. Line 123, option 3. If the buyer conditions for the sales price on the appraisal, this is if they refuse to renegotiate with you if the appraisal comes in less than the sales price. They can write a cancellation, and you are expected to get your deposit money back since they are inflexible at that point. Line 126, option 4. If there is some kind of lease or assessment on the property, which again is covered a little bit later, just below this actually, you are to be made aware if there are any leases or assessments. They are still legally binding, and you have to accept them as something that you would take on with the property. If it's not something that is amenable to you, we can cancel the contract and get your money back. Option 5, line 129, if the seller is unable to timely deliver to the buyer an approved sewer or water inspection report. This is new in Louisiana, and I think a really great thing. It's requiring the seller to have both the septic system and the well inspected if there is one on the property. These go through the parish, they go through the Environmental Services Department to make sure there's no bacteria in the well and that the sewage system, either it's a treatment plant or a septic system, passes muster. Usually it has to have a working aerator, and they'll check to see if it needs to be pumped or not. That falls in line with the rest of them. If line 6, if they will not provide the septic certificate, you can be out of the you can be let out of the contract penalty free. And then also line 7, if they get them inspected but then refuse to actually fix them should the inspectors find a problem, then again it could be your choice to either pay for the repairs yourself or to walk away from the contract and get your deposit money back. Line 138, leases and special assessments. This is pretty typical with someone has an investment property, they have tenants, or maybe they have some kind of lien on it or some kind of other easement. We have to be made aware within 5 calendar days anything special that's going on with the property, and you have to be okay with that. Maybe they have loaned out the guest apartment in the backyard for an additional year, and that contract is legally binding with the current tenant. You either have to assume it or walk away from the property at this point. But you do have 5 calendar days to be made aware of everything, so it's well within your inspection period. Line 145, new home construction. Those are additional addendums that are required when there is a new home being built. So they're not as common, and that's something we would cover as a case by case. Line 150, inspection and due diligence. This is really important. This is your time. It starts the day after all signatures are on the contract to gather insurance quotes and make sure all those numbers work in your favor. We want to call any current insurance company that might have a flood policy on it to make sure it's assumable. We want to kick all the tires that we can and then bring out a home inspector, which typically costs you about $300 average, to check out the home. They'll do a general of everything top to bottom from your roof to your basement if you had one, and give you a general consensus of what's going on with the property. If they think you need to bring in a specialist for additional inspections, they will suggest that. But you are absolutely, this is your time to bring in any and all parties, any contractors, any plumbers, fireplace inspectors, painters, whatever you want to do to really get a good eye on what this property needs and what it will cost you. Typically, like I said before, it's usually a 10-day period, but it could go as far as 14 days if you're out of the city or have a pretty busy working schedule. That does add a possibility to delaying our closing time, but we definitely want to make sure we really check out the property before we move forward, because that's our time to really have the easiest time checking out the property and then possibly canceling the contract if we need to. So that's line 157. We'll put in there something along the lines of a 10 to 14 day period. After you've done your inspections, line 169, we will have to fill out another document. We can either, on this document, we can either pick option 1, where we can just terminate the contract. We're no longer interested. Maybe we find out something really unfortunate, like there was a possibility of Chinese drywall. So we no longer just want to move forward, so we're going to pick option 1. Or maybe we find out the flood insurance is going to be a bit higher than what we're looking forward to, and we have no more interest in this property. So we'll fill out the cancellation. We'll also fill out the inspection response, pick option 1, sign it, and I will turn those in for you. But as in with most homes, you do have maybe 1 or 2 things that are pretty minor, but we would like to have fixed. And so we would pick option 2. And in that, we would detail certain things wrong with the property and then certain things we would like to have fixed. So typically things I write up are leaky sinks, maybe some patchwork on the roof, pretty normal stuff. Every home has it, but we would like the seller to take care of that so we can move in a little worry-free. Once we write that up and turn it in, The seller has 72 hours to respond to us saying they will either do all, some, or none. And then we have a 72-hour period to either accept this or cancel. So this adds to our closing time. This makes our inspection period a total of typically about 16 to 20 days. But after that, we move forward with the appraisal and then on towards the closing. The important thing with this, and I will be reminding you as will my coworker, that we have to have this request in by midnight on the date of our inspection period ending. So you'll be made aware of all those dates, and I'll be helping you along the way. Next section, line 189, private water sewerage. As I mentioned before, this is new. It's requiring the seller to have their own well or septic system inspected by the parish or by Department of Environmental Services to make sure it is certified to move forward. I would really just check mark here to indicate that there is one on the property, and it kind of dog ears another thing for title and lenders to look out for to make sure we have that additional documentation. Line 201, a good portion of the homes come with a home service warranty. Sometimes the seller will purchase it, sometimes the buyer will want to get their own. So this is where we'll indicate which party is buying it and how much we expect the home warranty budget to be. Line 212. This section down is pretty state specific. We are actually, 217 is typically what you'll see on your contract. We are an as-is state, so it's very important that we do all of our inspections, because once we close, that property is yours. There is no retribution, no backtracking on it. So if you happen to find something unfortunate on the property, like maybe the survey was done wrong and you actually have less acreage on the property than what you were initially expecting, it's kind of too bad, so sad. So it's really important that we do any and all inspections during our inspection period, that 10 to 14 day period after all signatures are on the contract, to make sure that property is what we expect it to be and acceptable to us. Moving on to the next section, line 230, merchantable title. This is pretty much in case there's any kind of cloud that comes up on the title. The title company will be working diligently on your contract the day that we get it all signatures on it, and you decide which title company you want to use, since it is a buyer's choice. Only every now and then does the seller specify a particular title company they want to use, and it often has to do with things like succession or bank-owned properties. This will put in on line 234 a set number of days that we will allow an extension to incur due to a cloud on the title. It is a service to you to keep you from being tied to a property that they might take a long time clearing the cloud on. Maybe there's an unexpected heir, or someone that has some kind of ownership to the property, some kind of right to it, and we have to clear that up. The title company's attorneys will work on it, but we like to keep them to a restricted period so that you are not just waiting for them to do it on their time frame. Line 242, the final walkthrough. We do these to make sure the home is in the same or better condition starting 5 calendar days prior to our closing date or active sale. So you will be walking through with me or another of our group's agents to make sure that it passes our expectations, that it is actually in the same or better condition. If there are any complaints, we'll write up the document and turn it into the seller so that they can address it well before our closing time. Line 248. You'll see it actually mirrors the section below, 259. It shows that the sellers and buyers actually have equal rights. If for some reason the seller decides to terminate the agreement erroneously, they can be sued for a specific performance by you. You can take them to court saying along the lines of, they said they would sell it, so you're going to force them to sell it. You can also sue for up to 10% of the sales price for damages. So to put you out for your legal fees that you'll have to incur by that point, along with all the home inspection and moving and anything that may have happened. Know that the seller can do the same thing to you if you cancel outside of your inspection period, or if the appraisal comes in over and or even under, and they do renegotiate. These are the only times you can really get out of your contract and get your deposit money back. Aside from that, if you decide you just have cold feet and you terminate, they can sue you to buy it. That's specific performance because you made all the behavior saying you were going to buy it, and so they can hold you to it. They can also sue you for up to 10% of the sales price to offset some of their damages for pulling it off the market for so long. Mold-related hazards. Typically, we refer you to this website because it's will break down that pretty much every home has mold, but I'm not a specialist and I can't tell you what types and what might be harmful or not. So this website will supply you with the information and the sources to go to. Line 274, offender notification. This website is provided for you to look up any registered sex offenders in your area. It's another thing to do maybe during your inspection period so that you know who your neighbors are. Line 281, choice of law. We are a Louisiana licensed real estate group, so we follow all their dictates. Deadlines, this is really important. Line 284, all deadlines are actually in calendar days. Real estate is 24/7, so we count every day as a business day. So anything in there, your inspection period, your inspection response period, they're all in calendar days. Line 287, this is a catch-all for anything else we may want to add to our contract. Again, we want to have it on this paperwork so that it's legally binding. But typically what you'll see here are things like we want the seller to provide a termite certificate. Maybe we have a predicated offer, meaning you have to sell a home first, and we want to make sure that we protect your inspection period time. So anything additional that is specific to this purchase is going to be in this section. Line 294, roles of the brokers and designated agents. This is a really long section essentially saying I am licensed in Louisiana to negotiate real estate. I can point you in the right direction for a lot of other things that might be of interest to you that might be related to the home, but I am not the specialist for it. I don't do zoning. I don't know about compliance. I can look up covenants and restrictions, but I am not someone that can say for sure, yes, you can build a huge shed in your backyard. So, and the same with my broker. So this is just to acknowledge our roles. Line 313. This is just any additional paperwork that may be attached to this contract. If it had a well or septic system, we would check off line 314 saying, yep, there's a private water sewage addendum that needs to come with this contract. And the title company and the lenders are going to look for that because they really want every T crossed and I dotted. Line 323, the singular and plural use. Pretty much just explaining that in the document that we've just gone over, anything that has to do with buyer, it could also say he, she, it. It could be singular, it could be plural, but it all means essentially it's referring to the buyer. And same with sections where it refers to the seller. Line 327, acceptance. Any acceptance has to be done in writing. We need to have all signatures on here in the time frame that we specify. You'll see at the end of this contract there is an expiration. We have to have signatures on there within that time to be legally binding. Line 333, notices and other communications. We want everything to be done in writing that is possible, but with our new technological era, we can definitely do digital signatures, e-signatures, faxes. These are all acceptable and legally binding forms of communication. So we no longer have to have what used to be called or is called a wet signature. We no longer have to go to your house, have you actually sign it, and then go to the seller and have them sign it. So a lot of digital sources are perfectly acceptable and legally binding. Line 339. I'll be checking this off and putting my email address in, letting the other parties know that they are authorized to use me as a liaison. They can communicate about the contract to me, and I will then pass along information to you guys. Line 345, the contract. As I mentioned before, it's legally binding when both seller and buyer signatures are on there within that time frame. Entire agreement. This agreement constitutes the entire agreement between parties. So if you want to do anything extra, if you want to maybe negotiate to buy the lawnmower separately, if it's not on this contract, I cannot hold it to this document. We have to have a separate maybe bill of sale for that. And that's something that's often handled separately between the seller and buyer, although of course I'm happy to help with anything. Line 351, expiration of the offer. Typically you'll have about 24 hours for a seller to respond to us. However, if it's a bank, they often need more like 72 hours. So in Louisiana, as it'll say here, the offer is binding and irrevocable until a set expiration date. So if you change your mind in the middle of the night, we can't quite do that. This offer is legal until the expiration. So if they sign it in that time frame, then we are under contract and we'll move forward from there. But luckily you have an inspection period that will save you if you decide you have cold feet. And that's essentially it. All your information will be here, buyer and sellers. And if you have any questions, please contact us.